welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'm going to be looking at a new palm that I've just recently acquired. Now the challenge for me in this instance is going to be to try and resurrect this palm, bring it back to a healthy state. As you can see, it's really looking a bit sad, a bit sorry for itself. I recently got this for free, somebody no longer needed it anymore. And it just basically wasn't looked after too great for a while, and that's why it's looking quite poor and sickly. It's probably been allowed to dry out, maybe been put in direct sunshine for a bit. Well, I'm not sure what's happened, but it's not looking too good anyway. So what I'm going to do is try and restore this. It's also had a few aphids, so I'm going to wash them off, put a bit of soap solution on, hopefully deal with them. I haven't seen any living aphids at the moment, but you can still see kind of sappy, shiny residue on that from the aphids. So I'll be dealing with that. So because I acquired this, there's been no label on it, so I'm not entirely sure what palm it is. I've looked in my book, there's a couple of palms it could be, but when it's so young, it's kind of hard to tell. It is a very small palm at the moment, but that doesn't give an indication as to how big it will eventually get. Most palms do grow quite large, apart from possibly the parlour palm, but even that one gets big eventually. So the two that I think it could be, is it could either be an areca palm, as it's quite yellow, but then this yellow in colour could be just because it's quite unhealthy and not very happy at the moment. And the other palm it could possibly be is a Hoia palm, but we'll just see. If any of you guys are palm experts, please do let me know. So I'm just going to go ahead and start treatment on this. Now one of the problems with palms is when you buy them, you don't actually buy one plant, you buy about 10 or 20 shoved in a really small pot. These plants in the wild, if you ever see a palm tree, they do need quite a bit of space. Even the smaller palms, they're generally quite big after a few years, and when they're jammed in this close together, they're never going to be too happy. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut off all these damaged leaves, just to improve the appearance. Also get some more light into the plant. You can see there's quite a lot of congestion going on. That's also because there's too many in a small space. Get rid of these damaged leaves because they won't be doing a lot of photosynthesis. That'll give space for some new leaves to come up, and it'll also improve the overall appearance. It'll make it look a lot healthier and a lot nicer, even if I'm not actually doing much apart from removing old dead material. So I'm just going to take them down to where the stem from the leaf joins to the main part of the main stem. I'm just going to cut it off like that. Just going to go around doing that on all of them. Now on some of the plants, say if it's a very small one and all the leaves are damaged, I might leave one or two of the more damaged ones or completely cut off the plant, because if you do take off all the leaves, it's not very good for the individual plant. You do want to make sure at least every plant has at least one good healthy leaf left, otherwise it will probably die off. But I'll just go around now and I'll cut off a lot of these leaves. So that's most of the unhealthy leaves now gone. As you can see, it already looks a lot better. Even though the plant isn't any healthier than it was before, it just looks a lot nicer with all those dead leaves taken off. But this will become a healthier plant. As I say, there's plenty of light now getting to most of these. And looking around, there are some of these really small ones that are kind of still a bit smothered. And I think I'm just going to cut these right off at the base. There's far too many plants in this one pot, so I'm just going to cut these off, as they're just going to be competing for resources, competing for light, competing for water and feed. So I'm just going to take out these really little ones, thin down the numbers, and although I have less plants in this pot, the plants that are remaining are going to be a lot healthier. Now there's a chance some of these might try and resprout, and I'll probably cut them off if they do, because I don't want too many plants in this pot. So there we are, that's probably thinned out enough for now until these plants get larger anyway. You can see plenty of space for them all. They've all got healthy new leaves coming through. This one here is still a little bit small and sickly, a bit of damage on these leaves, but nothing too bad. So what I'm going to do now, just take this into the shower, give it a good rinse, get rid of all this sticky material from the aphids. If that's left on there, what it does is it forms a barrier, it collects dust and dirt, it can also grow mould, and then there's less light getting to the plant, and that can cause quite a bit of damage to the leaves. Sometimes you can even kill them off. So give that a rinse. Now I'll come back and then I'll put it in a new pot, because this pot is really quite small for this plant. And it's probably been sitting in here for maybe a year or two, so it needs some new fresh compost that'll give it more nutrients, it'll hold water better, and it should grow a lot better because of that. So that's the palm now rinsed. As you can see, it's looking quite fresh. It's quite a good idea to do this on a lot of plants actually, a lot of house plants. Just give them a rinse of water, because in the wild they're going to be rained on, especially if it's a tropical plant such as this, almost every day. For non-tropical plants like cacti and that, it's not such an issue. But even most plants, they will be rained on quite often in the wild, so it's good to give it a rinse every now and again, wash it off any dirt, any dust, and just kind of reinvigorates the plant a little bit. So now I'm going to put this into a larger plant pot. As I said before, this is going to be quite congested in this small pot. It really needs more space. So first of all, I'm just going to take this out and have a look at how the roots look, and also what the existing compost is like. You can see there, it is very congested, especially towards the bottom, lots of little roots. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take off any loose compost. I don't really want to keep much of this original compost if I can help it, because this original compost is going to be quite old and tired. It needs to be fresh really, there's not going to be much nutrients left in it. So I'll just take off whatever's loose. And I would like to take off some of these roots as well. These are just going to be tangled around. This will weaken the plant slightly, but it will stop it from being tangled. So I'm just going to get some scissors and I'm just going to cut off these tangled roots, because they're just going to be taking up space in the pot, and because they're so tangled together they won't be able to get much nutrients or water. Normally with a plant you wouldn't expect the roots to be quite this bad, and I would often just spread them out and put them in the new pot, but because this one is so badly congested and because the roots are quite brittle on these palms, I'm just going to cut them off because I'll probably snap if I try spreading them out too much. So that looks a lot better already. I'll just take a little bit more off. What that'll do is it will encourage the plant to put down a lot of new roots to replace those ones that it's lost, and they will be nicely spread out in the new compost instead of all kind of spiraled around in the old pot. So just going to make sure it's about the right height, so I just need to add a little bit more to the bottom. And the compost I'm using is quite a rich peat-based compost, but I've added some perlite to make sure it's free draining. It's quite important that your palm has free draining compost, otherwise if it just sits there and gets stagnant with the very wet roots it will rot off. So I'm just going to go around the edge, fill it all in with the compost. Just going to pack it down, make sure any gaps are filled in, because if there's any air gaps then the roots will just die off where it hits the air, as it'll be too dry for it. I'm wanting to plant it a similar depth to where it was planted before, so I'm just going to add a tiny bit more I think. So that looks about the right level. What I'll do is I'll give it a good soak in to make sure the roots are nice and damp and the compost has been washed into all the spaces. Once I've done that, I'll check the level again, because quite often the compost sinks when you water it, and I'll give that a quick top up as needed. So apart from that, I think that's this one pretty much ready now to live out his new life in a happy new pot in a nice sunny location. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in a really warm, humid, bright environment, really give it some good growing conditions, because it's going to be very stressed. It's had a lot of roots removed, it had a lot of leaves removed. It's going to be a bit of a shock for the plant. It needs some tender loving care for a little while. So I want to give it the best treatment I can. So I'm going to be giving it an environment that's very similar to what it would have in the wild, just really hot, humid, quite intense sunlight, but I'm not going to give it like tropical sun, because that will just scorch it, because it's been in quite a shady position. I'm going to give it what it would probably get in the wild, which is going to be underneath some tree, kind of dappled shade with quite bright light, because it does come from the tropics. Higher temperature as I can get, which is probably about 26 in my grow box, and I'll keep it well humid, good humidity levels, probably about 60% humidity. I can't go much higher than that because I start getting mold issues inside an indoor house. So I'll give you guys an update when this is leafed out a bit. As I say, it should be quite a big difference. This should send up a lot of new leaves. They are quite slow growing, a lot of the palms, so I'm not expecting this to be a fast process. Often with the palms you don't really notice them growing, but then after several years you notice how big they've become. So it'll probably be about 3 or 4 months before I can probably do an update on this. But as I say, I'll give you an update either at the end of this video, or if you just wait for the next video to come up in a few months' time. So it's now 4 months later. As you can see, the palm has done really well. It's put on lots of new growth. I do have some new shoots coming from some of the old ones that I've cut off, so I will be removing some of those shoots in this part of the video, because I don't want to get too congested at all. But generally it's done really well. The new growth is all looking really nice and healthy. You can see we've got some much more mature looking leaves, like this one up here. There's lots more mature looking shape. Because before, I think in the first half of the video, a lot of the leaves were like this, had just 2 or 3 leaflets, and these were kind of like the juvenile foliage. But now we have more of the mature foliage, more of the typical palm fronds. So that's nice to see that the plants are getting a bit more mature now. You can also see the leaves are much darker than they used to be. I do have some of these older ones which are still looking a bit tatty and just not looking too nice. So I'm going to remove them to make it look a bit nicer. But it's done well. All I've done is I've watered it, kept it humid by misting it, and I've given it a feed I think twice since I repotted it, but there's quite a lot of feed in the compost already, so I haven't given it too much more feed. The stems have thickened up really nice. You can see this one in the middle in particular has really started to thicken up nicely. So what I'm going to do now is cut off some of these smaller ones at the bottom which have resprouted. If these smaller shoots are cut off regularly, they will eventually die off. But as I say, I haven't, apart from watering it, spraying it and feeding it, I haven't done any kind of maintenance on this plant. So that's why they've managed to survive and resprout. Not all of them did survive, some of them did die, some of the weakest ones. But the majority of them did start resprouting. But I would reckon only 2 or 3 more cuttings and they all should die off. There's also some of these brown dead bits here. I might just remove them just for appearance sake. They don't need to be removed, not causing any problem to the plant. If they are firmly attached though, I will leave them. I won't rip them out too hard. But I'll remove any of the loose ones anyway, just to improve the appearance of the plant. And then looking around, we do have a couple of older leaves which could be taken away. Ones which have still got damage from earlier on, from when it was under a bit of stress. So you can see this one here, this is one of the original leaves. It's got some stress on the edge there. It's just to improve the appearance. For the health of the plant, this does nothing. If anything, taking it away slightly weakens the plant because it has less leaves for photosynthesizing. But I'm just doing this purely for appearance reasons. Turning around, there's a little one here as well. I would actually like to take this one out completely. I had left this one to grow on, but it's very close to this other one here and it is getting quite congested, so I'm going to remove that one completely as well. So looking around, it looks like a nice, much nicer looking plant. I will leave these ones to grow on in the future. I might remove some more of these, I'm not too sure. If this is an areca palm, naturally they do have small little side shoots that come off from the plant. They don't have them at this stage though. It is like a clump forming palm where it'll grow lots of side shoots and it'll have several stems. These aren't actually one plant with side shoots, these are actually just lots of plants that have been put in as seedlings and they've just all grown together and got congested. So they'll be fighting against each other for resources. If it was one plant, it would be sharing its resources, it wouldn't be such an issue. And normally when you have one plant suckering, you don't normally sucker from such a young age. They're normally much more mature plants before they start sending up so many side shoots. But that's about it for this video, I think. As you can see, it's recovered quite nicely. It's got lots of new fronds starting to grow, and the new fronds are much larger. It'll be interesting to see how much bigger this becomes. I reckon it probably is an areca palm, although it's kind of hard to tell. If any of you do have suggestions, put it down in the comments below. And I'll take note. So that's all for this video of me restoring this old kind of tattered, unhealthy areca palm. Now, I might do an update in the future, but palms are quite slow growing and I'm going to be putting this in quite a shady location because it's quite a handy plant to have, because you often have trouble spots in houses where you have a dark location, but you really want to put a plant in there. You don't know what plant would do well. Palms are always one of the really good ones that will go well in a shady location. So it won't grow at its best in a shady spot, but it will grow and it will still look nice. It doesn't get leggy or anything like that really. So I'll be putting it there, so the growth will slow down. And I'll give you guys an update. It could be 6 months, it could be a year, and we'll see how much bigger it's grown by then. I'll also be thinking about putting it in a new pot by then, I think, because as you can see, the pot really has, it does fit the pot quite nicely at the moment, but you can tell that it wouldn't be too much longer before it needs a repot, because for the size of the plant, the pot's about right. So in 6 months to a year, if the plant continues to grow at a decent pace, I should expect that I'll need to repot it by that point. So that's all for this video. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next update.